Hi, I'm Colin.
And I'm Bert.
This is Dabbing with Washington Artists. The idea is simple 6 questions,
And 6 dabs.
as we get to know the artists behind the art that makes Washington, Washington.
So sit back and light those torches.
Because this is Dabbing with Washington Artists.
I'm Seven the Panther.
I'm Sean Odell, for the executive producers of Cultureless.
For today's series of dabs, we will begin our smoke session with the Sugar Mama, a Chemical Sunset, and a Blackjack, and we will finish our episode with a Lemon Cane, a Hawaiian, and a Jack Herrera.
So I just wanted to start out by saying thanks for coming back. It's great to have you guys here. You guys have done this before, so we'll get to it. The first strain of the day is Sugar Mama.
Sugar Mama is a hybrid strain known for its maple and skunky taste and strong body high and relaxation effects. We found these saucy diamonds at a shop on 112th Avenue in Everett.
Perfect. And it might even still be going there, so you might be able to just go for it. Yep. So, for our first question, you have a new project, Cultureless. What can you tell us about the making of the documentary? What's that like?
Yeah. It's really, so it starts out with me and Seven, really just trying to explore what we want to bring to a particular episode. So the show takes place, each season is going to take place in a new area. So season 1 is the Pacific Northwest. And just based off of that area and then the community, we try and, give a good local feel to how Black culture is impacted by this environment.
Mm-hmm.
So, researching that is probably our biggest time span for prepping up a new episode.
Okay.
And really just, figuring out what guests we want, things like that. And then as soon as we have that built up and we have, all of our shooting scheduling, I direct it myself. And then I have an assistant director for when I'm on camera. So a lot of times, Seven takes over, is the main interviewer, and I'm, directing him, and we're getting some good info, and then it's just a matter of putting it all together. Got a couple castmates with us, and so we executive produce the show together.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best parts about putting this together. Like it was, in the beginning, the very first episode was kind of like, okay, what are we gonna do? This. Okay, cool. And we kind of had an idea, okay, we're going to do this, and we want to do this, we want to do this. But it's weird to me how, as we progress through it, each episode, as it progresses, kind of leads us into what should. Like, for whatever reason, the way we have it set up in our heads already, and in the listing, like, the episodes kind of automatically roll in that direction for some reason. So it's like, without us even trying, it just all kind of ties together.
So for our second dab, we have Chemical Sunset.
Chemical Sunset is a sativa-dominant hybrid known for its energizing, uplifting high, and its both fruity and skunky taste. We picked up a gram of this sugar wax at a shop in Shoreline.
Oh yeah. Should I press it again?
Yeah, what's the light doing? Is it off?
Yeah, it's on.
Yeah, go ahead and press it twice. There you go. Yeah, perfect. Perfect. There you go. There you go. Alright, so for number 2, we noticed, as you guys mentioned before, that you guys intend to go do different seasons in different areas of the country. How has been starting in the Seattle area, and do you expect differences in reception and reactions when you go to different parts of the country?
Well, starting here is, I guess because we already have active, things that we do in this area already. We already know certain people, have been certain places, so people kind of have a recognition already. So when you build that kind of rapport with people and they kind of know, okay, well, we know Seven is this kind of person. You know, he talks about this a lot. Okay, Sean, he supports these things. Blah, 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 blah. So now seeing Cultureless come from us isn't strange for people here. However, some of the information that we bring to the table is kind of like, huh? Word? I didn't know. And it's like, oh, you mean you're from here and you didn't know? I don't feel bad because I'm not from here, so I have a reason not to know, but we went and found out. But I honestly feel like when we start going to other places, like next season we're in LA, I think when people who have a certain perception of those places sees, you know, the things that we delve into and the information we bring to the table, it's going to cause a different reaction even from the people who are here who know us already. You know what I'm saying? So I'm actually looking forward to that because I can admit, even with my within myself, sometimes you have a certain idea of what you think a place is like. And
Sure.
what, you know, what you think the relationship between people is in those places. And then to come, like when I moved out here and I actually saw, like, wait, really? I had no idea. This is kind of crazy. It's an eye-opener. It's definitely
Absolutely.
an eye-opener. Yeah, definitely an eye-opener.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, the change in reaction is one of the things that the show's about because people react to things differently based on their environments as well.
Absolutely.
So, and then you know the culture changes based on your environment. So, the way people react, obviously, even here, you're gonna have some people react in one way and some people react in the other. I mean, we've already had to deal with some of that, but it's you know, that location and how everybody reacts based off of their different environments is actually something that the show is there to explore. I mean, you know, words and phrases are used in different ways from East Coast to West Coast, or you know, even city to city at you know some point even on the same coast. And you know, so you might say something over here and it hits different over there. So all of a sudden it's like, you know, there's a lot of things that balance that out, but that's one of the dope things that we get to explore when we're doing these.
Absolutely.
Case in point, filthy. Out here, you say filthy, and it's a great thing. First time I talked to my friends back east after I moved out, I was like, yo, that's filthy. They was like, hey, I just watched this. What are you talking about? You don't like the jacket? I'm like, nah, I mean, like, out here they say that and it means it's dope. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. So yeah, like something as simple as that, you know what I'm saying? Something that's an everyday part of the vernacular here. And it's a word that people hear every single day, everywhere.
Sure.
But because of the application of it here, how that's perceived elsewhere is like, what?
Yeah.
So I mean, and so we're hoping that Cultureless moving forward with each season kind of gets that same reaction. Like, oh man, so we have this situation with trying to establish business in Seattle. Oh wait, they go through it in LA too, but it's got this slant on it and they call it this. Oh, that's crazy. So like, you know, yeah, a lot of people think their struggles ain't the same, but they are everywhere.
That's great. For number 3, we've got Blackjack, which is another hybrid.
Blackjack is a hard-hitting sativa-dominant hybrid known for its kick of energy and tendency to leave the smoker in a haze. We found a gram of this shatter at a shop on 88th Avenue in Linwood.
Yeah, I think I just overloaded that a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Careful.
Sorry.
Got the touch of the side in there.
Yeah.
So, the Black Panther movement is commonly associated with places like Oakland and Detroit, but Seattle has its own history with the movement. What can you tell us about what you have learned about Seattle's forgotten history while working with legends like Aaron Dixon?
Man, you make me go first on
Yep.
this. Yeah. So because that episode just came out, man. That man, like, so there were points in between shooting, and this doesn't really answer your question, but it's just too good not to tell.
Sure, yeah.
Just because, there were points where you know we were shooting the Aaron Dixon episode interview. We were shooting the interview with Elmer Dixon and Naeem Sharif, and after like the interviews are much longer than you see on the show.
Oh,
Like,
of course.
I think the shortest one was 2 hours. Like,
wow.
and I think with
Yeah.
Aaron we went like 3.5. Yeah. So and but you know, and we'd have little breaks in between questions, but it was really like just complete go. Like, and we're actually gonna be releasing those to where you guys can see like what actually happened during the breaks and stuff. But
that'd be cool.
there were so many, like so much, but in like 2 or 3 hours, but then once the cameras went down, all of a sudden we'd be like, all right, and and we're talking back and forth to each other, and that's been probably the biggest thing as far as seeing the forgotten history is like it's those moments that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life, and that's something that we talked about. Like this isn't something that a lot of people are going to be able to experience, but the 3-hour discussion speaking to one of those gentlemen will account for. I don't care how many books you want to read. I don't care, how many documentaries you want to watch to hear it from their mouths and them telling not even something that's been written down before. Just I had this experience one day. We got a phone call and it's just random occurrences.
Yeah.
And
Some of that stuff
that's the stuff that I'm never gonna forget.
Yeah, that's for real. Some of that stuff you won't see on a documentary because they want to get the sensation things. Just to hear a gentleman that I know was 17, 18 years old at the time, for me to ask him, what about fear? Any logical person would be afraid, you know what I'm saying? I mean, despite knowing that you gotta do what you gotta do, but what about the fear? You know what I'm saying? And to see him stone cold with no hesitation, look dead into the camera and say, fear? What fear? Wasn't no time to be afraid. We had work to do. And I was like, and I mean, like I said, I've been an activist since I was 15 years old, and I've had some monumental moments of that turned physical, got out of hand or whatever the case may be, and but to hear him say as a 17-year-old in the 60s, you know what I'm saying, to come back to Seattle from them going to Oakland and telling Bobby Seale and them, hey, we want to start a chapter. He said, okay, go set it up. I'm coming. Bobby Seale came up, told them what they needed to know, gave his blessing. They were a certified chapter, and they were the first chapter established outside of California.
Mm-hmm.
So when people may recognize it from Oakland and LA and Chicago, Detroit, New York, Seattle was before all of them. You know what I'm saying? And like for me to not even have even a small relationship to the racial politics history in Washington, because I'm not from here. You know what I'm saying? I have no idea. Before 4.5 years ago when I moved here, I don't know. Whatever. You know what I'm saying? So to learn that.
Supersonics.
You know what I'm saying? Exactly. I know the Sonics, the Seahawks, and the Mariners keep stealing all of our Yankees, but it's cool.
I think you got that reversed, bro.
Well, we gave y'all Cano. But I mean, it's been very, very awakening for me because so like I said, my father was a Panther. I'm a Panther. So now, but to know people who stood in that gap and said, "Hey, not here," you know what I'm saying, and then to visit all of those places that were significant to their movement, Garfield High School. Shout out to Amani at Rooted in the CD. Just to see all of those things and to actually feel the energy of those places is like, oh man, you know what I'm saying? Like this is a real thing.
Absolutely.
Oh man, yeah. It was powerful. I'm gonna share something, nobody knows this, but there were like the night we did the Aaron Dixon interview and the night we did the Aaron Dixon video. On my way driving back to Tacoma, I literally like cried in the car because it moves me that deeply to know that there were people who without a shadow of a doubt, without blinking, without a second thought, said, "Hey, we don't like what we see, and we want to change it."
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Like there's something very powerful about that. So yeah, maybe I'm just a big old softy.
So for number 4, we have a sativa dominant hybrid, lemon cane.
Lemon cane is a sativa dominant hybrid with an exceptional terpene profile of lemon, earthiness, and citrus, and is known for its tendencies to leave the smoker calm and euphoric. We scored a gram of these sugar diamonds at a shop in Everett.
Beautiful.
Holy hot rocks. When it went,
Oh yeah, no, dude, that's kind of what happened to me when I was declogging it before.
make it happen,
Awesome, man.
The Pacific Northwest and Seattle in particular have a long history of activism and progressive politics. In your opinions, what is it about this region that that has fostered the movement and kept it active over the years?
You might be better equipped to answer that than me.
It's kind of an odd notion, but the diversity of the area is usually what is being protested. Once you start getting down to like broad terms of things. Obviously there's different things, but what it comes down to is either a lack of diversity or trying to promote that. Anyway, going to that notion of diversity, it's also that diversity that makes the voice so loud. Because if you have, in a lot of other states where you don't see that, you don't see the protests and it's not quite as active, it's because you can't protest with just one voice. So if there's one group that's mad, nowadays it's almost that's not enough. But the fact is you don't have just one group out here that's talking. We have people of all different races and creeds and color and everything, and so the area is so diverse, and enough of them are promoting togetherness enough that they can speak in one voice, and that makes it very loud.
True. I mean, I guess in a sense, I could speak to that kind of part of it, because I actually shared something on Facebook the other day that said you don't fight racism with racism, you fight racism with solidarity. And it's a quote that Bobby Seale said it, Fred Hampton said it, I'm pretty sure other people have said it, but those are the two people who I readily associate the quote with. But I think that's a part of the battery in the back of Washington activism. The solidarity, but the fact that there are so many, you can't help but have friends who are different from you, because it's just so much of everybody, you know what I'm saying? I can speak from living in North Carolina. There was black, white, Mexican, and you got a sprinkle of Asians over here. There were no Islanders, there were barely any Jamaicans, maybe 5 Jamaicans, you know what I'm saying? Maybe more than that, but I'm just saying, relatively. Maybe 5 Jamaicans over here, and then you might have a one Haitian guy that lives over there all by himself, no family, he's just chilling Haitian all by himself. So like, but then when I came here, and I was like immediately struck by, oh man, okay, there's another black guy. Hey, how you doing? Okay, this white guy. Hey, how you doing? Oh shoot, Japanese, okay, Chinese, okay. You're what? Holy smoke! What? All of these people from all these places, like I can't believe it. And I see them all in the same place. We're all in one place, listening to hip hop, smoking, and it's all love. You know what I'm saying? So when something like protesting happens, which is such a hip hop thing, hip hop is a protest in and of itself. But anyway, that's a whole other story. That let me know that the protest voice here is strong. Plus, I know about the history. What is it, WTO, and like a lot of other stuff that's happened in Seattle. I'm aware of those things. So it's like, it's not my imagination. It's not just historically relevant. They're still there. Like that beam is still burning here. You know what I'm saying? So when George Floyd happened, and then all the protests sprung up, and Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery. Well, we ain't gonna go into all of them names. Like it's just too many to remember them all. But like when that sparked, it didn't shock me in the least to see Seattle do what it did. You know what I'm saying? It didn't shock me at all. A lot of people from other places that I know were like, yo, you see what they doing in Seattle? And a couple of nights I was out there, so I'm like, I'm in Seattle right now, what's up? What are you seeing that I don't see? I mean, we out here representing, it's all good. And this was all before. I mean, the couple times I pulled up was before the whole Chop Chaz thing happened, but because I figured I live in Tacoma, we got our own problems. Seattle got it, obviously. Let's do our thing. To see that, just let me know. Okay, I'm not tripping. That fire's still alive out here. They didn't put it out. It's just that it's been quiet because it really wasn't. Nobody really was revved up enough to fight. But the pandemic, I think, is in large part responsible for the wave of protests and the wave of actual pushing and continuing to push to make things change that we see. Generally, you see a reaction and then a fall off until something happens again. Then it's a reaction and another fall off.
Yeah, I was kind of amazed by that myself when it made it past the first weekend.
Yes.
Like, because the normal way protests have always worked around here is, one weekend people will be out there, but then by the time Monday came rolled around, everybody's back to work, But when there's a pandemic going on, not everybody's got to go back to work.
Let's do this.
So there's the personal side of that discussion, which is what you guys have been talking about, having to go back to work, things like that. The other thing that really drove what was happening now during the pandemic was you went from 50 stories on the news a night down to maybe 8. And 4 of them had to do with the pandemic.
Yep.
So you went to a very, very small report. And then all of a sudden, George Floyd, all of a sudden people were like, oh my God, this guy died, and nobody's reporting anything else. Headline 1, pandemic. Oh, headline 2, bang, right there. Every news station that you were on, George Floyd. People were home and bored and had enough that they could latch onto and say, look, like, this is wrong. And then all of a sudden the people that had never heard that before, because the message was so drowned out, are realizing this ain't the first time that happened. Maybe the first time this week.
Yeah. I mean, all those other times they were saying something happened, they might have been right.
Yeah. So it's not just people were at home, it was that people were at home and were actually able to see the story for what it was, rather than it being a 30-second runoff piece where they say the dude's name maybe once. They were able to go into it a lot more than that now. So the media had a huge part to do with it. And it was before all of the, even really the protests, all the riots, it's before all of that. The fact that the media led the voice of George Floyd when nobody has really gotten that in the past, that's what sparked it.
Thanks.
The media wanted it, so that's what they said.
That's real talk.
So for number 5, we have Hawaiian.
Hawaiian is a classic sativa that is known for its smooth smoke, hints of lemon, and tendencies to leave the smoker focused and chatty. We picked up a gram of this crumble from a shop on Broadway in Everett.
Sheesh. That was. Oh. Yeah, you're gonna have to tap that. That was work.
So Black history and the cannabis industry have often moved hand in hand, with there still being a disproportionate number of people of color incarcerated for weed-related crimes. Now that cannabis is legal in many states, what do you think the cannabis industry can do to help communities of color moving forward?
Black owned
business,
yeah. We saw I was in North Carolina at the time, and I saw somebody posted the new weed shop that was open with Sean Kemp on the side, and he's smiling and hey, and I'm like, oh man, Sean Kemp got a weed shop. That's what's up. And then I hit Sean. I was like, yo, we need to talk about this on Cultureless. He was like, bro, hold up, pump your brakes. And we found out that Sean Kemp don't own it. He's just the face and a bunch of other stuff. And I'm like, oh, wait. It just doesn't make sense to me that, okay, somewhere like Seattle almost makes sense to me, only because there's so many more white people than everybody else. But, I mean, even in that, it could still be, it could still be a better situation. But, like, say somewhere like Washington, D.C. that has a large black population. like a huge black population. You legalize, and despite the fact that there are guys doing federal time behind weed in DC because it's not a state. There's not more allowance of black ownership to say, hey, look, man, we already taking away letting some of these guys out of jail. The next thing we can do is, you are obviously selling it to support your people and to support your well-being. So this is the best, this is what we can do for you now. Boom, it's legal. You can make a killing. Here you go. Do your thing. That don't mean cut everybody else out of it. I mean, it's a whole lot of people that's locked up behind some weed that shouldn't be. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So I'm like, but let everybody eat equally. If you're gonna legalize it, and you only legalize it because as a government, you can make a ton of money because everybody smokes. You know what I'm saying? So boom, we can make a killing. But in the process of us making a killing, let's try to halfway right this wrong that we fucked up at. You know what I'm saying? But that's like expecting. Excuse my terminology, but it's like expecting your oppressor to have a conscience, and I don't know. That's crazy.
So for number 6, we have one more sativa. It's the Jack Herrera.
Jack Herrera is a sativa-dominant classic strain known for its cerebral high and tendency to leave the smokers focused and alert. With hints of spice, pine, and earthiness, it has a rich terpene profile that lingers long after smoking. We found a gram of these diamonds at a shop in Marysville.
Oh man, yeah. Perfect. Okay.
Oh man.
American culture has demonstrated a pattern of a cultural appropriation, from Big Mama Thornton to a lot of radio-friendly hip-hop. What role do you see Cultureless playing in the walking the line of cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation?
Yeah, this isn't the first time we've got this question. I
Yeah,
guess it's good that we can
absolutely.
finally be on the record with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I've never been 6 dabs in answering the question, but the point of the show is, my journey of learning of the culture that I've loved for so long. And 7 is my,
Tour guides.
yeah, tour guide. Yeah. So that's not what I'm trying to be. That's what I'm trying to learn.
Sure.
And I don't. It's an odd thing. Like, if you go and watch any documentary, you don't really pin the documentarian and the subject matter together. Like,
Sure.
Yeah. James Earl Jones or Morgan Freeman can voice over a documentary. That doesn't mean that they have anything to do with the subject matter. But when you're talking about a show about race, that's when all of a sudden we're not documentarians anymore. That's when it's like, if you're putting your name on it, that's what your name is now. And it's odd that that's the only subject matter that would happen to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what the show is about. Like me being a documentarian and 7 being, going along that path with me. It's something that I'm trying to learn and appreciate, not something that I'm trying to take over or even be a part of any more than I can.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know that.
I think it's It's interesting that I mean I understand where the question comes from. I get it. Like every time we hear it, I'm like shit. But I get it. I understand why you would ask that. Okay, so I was like my biggest thing going back to your whole thing about being a documentarian is the plus side of it is you're not a documentarian who's documenting from a distance and then making suppositions about the subject matter. You actually have an active participant in the subject matter, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? Several active participants from different places with different perspectives, even of that particular culture. So, and the plus side of that is because we're talking about going to different places, the thing that people, and most people that watch this will understand exactly what I mean. It doesn't matter that I'm not from Seattle. It doesn't matter that I'm not from Los Angeles or from Philly or from Chicago. When we go to these places, there are times where I'm going to have to be the point of contact and it's going to be okay simply because I'm black. And I get that. You know what I'm saying? It's cool. Because I want people to know that, hey, it's not a matter of Sean saying, hey, let me pull these strings and y'all do this and unlock the door for me. Nah, he's genuinely a lover of not only hip hop, but of black culture, period. You know what I'm saying? He's more well-read and more empathetic to some issues that affect the black community than some black people that I know. So it's like,
I thought I knew where you were going with that statement, and it went in a different direction.
no, it's true. Like the thing is, going back to the not fighting racism with racism, but fighting racism with solidarity. How else do you have true solidarity with somebody if you can't show them behind the curtain? Okay, when you see black people exposed to you in the media or however else you see this one thing. Come, let me show you what it really looks like from the inside. Because once you see that, yeah, you're still never going to be black. However, now you understand why you even giving a fuck matters. You know what I'm saying? Okay, this is why it matters that you care about this thing. And this is why it matters that he cares enough to do this, to find out this thing that he's been along the ride for all this time. Let me get a look at the engine for a minute. Like, I've been riding this car for a minute. Like, what's powering this? What is this? You know what I'm saying? And then, of course, granted, it's still not my car. I'm never going to know what it's like to own this car, but at least I understand the car now.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? So, you know, a lot of people love hip hop, but they don't really love black culture. They just love hip hop music or rap music, whatever you want to call it. They love basketball. Their favorite basketball player is probably a black guy. But they don't really love black culture. You know what I'm saying? So there's a difference when you find someone who really is tied enough, like from in here, not just up here, and genuinely wants to understand something.
Absolutely.
How could you not help that? Help that process if you're able.
The biggest, or I guess I should say the best example, the most glaring example of this not being appropriation in my eyes is if you go watch either episode that's out right now. I think I talk 5 minutes or less in episode 1, and it might be a little bit more in episode 2, just because I asked a lot of questions because I was enthralled in this conversation with Aaron and Elmer. But I guarantee I speak less than like 10 minutes.
Totally.
And it's an hour-long show. And I'm literally saying, aside from the opening credits, 5 to 10 minutes of speaking for me. Being, I'm the one that's cultureless. Like the show is about both of us, and then our friends that we choose to bring in. But the cultureless is in reference to me because what I've always considered my culture will never be my culture. So to have that. Say that I'm trying to take something over when I'm not the one saying anything. Like I'm literally sitting back as a spectator, just like anybody watching the show.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, he's the one that's bringing me on the journey. So, and I mean, anybody that want to say that you're trying to appropriate black culture,
well,
they'd be like, you damn right.
Damn, I do such a thing.
I'm just curious as to how you feel your show will help other people understand the difference, the divergence between appropriation and appreciation.
Like, and it's funny that you asked that, because there's actually some people who have been, in and out of kind of wanting to be a part of what we're doing, but not really sure. And some of the things that they say in reference to it kind of make me feel like that's the question they're asking. How can we definitively draw this line, and how is it showing that to the people who are going to see it? And I think the thing that's going to, for one, of course, is limited camera time. It says a lot.
Of
You know what I'm
course,
saying?
of course.
The fact that I do most of the talking, especially in the second episode, and I think as we progress further through it, what you're going to see is that the whole aspect of learning that is such a part of it. Like I told him, I said, you're going to have to be on the camera a little more, but be on the camera more in the essence of showing people you're taking in this information.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So that on the outside, the people who are allies, affiliates, whatever you want to call them, can say, hey, it was cool that I was out there at the protest. That was cool. And it's cool that I believe that this should be, but I really could know more. Maybe I should do that. So I got hella black friends now, especially after all of this has been going on and we've been bonded through this situation. Why don't I do the same? You know what I'm saying? And I think that if people look at it from an educational standpoint, it's not even a matter of I'm trying to learn all this stuff so I can be black. You're never gonna be black. You know what I'm saying? And it's made made very clear by him in the intro. If people really listen to what he's saying in the intro, he's saying, I've loved this culture my entire life, but in all actuality, even through my love and the research that I've done, I can honestly say I still don't understand.
Sure.
Completely. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what's the better way than reading a book or watching a documentary? I could like make a documentary and have my friends help me figure this out. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. I mean, just from my perspective, being the outsider looking in, to me, the difference between appropriating and then celebrating it is, in appropriation, you're trying to take ownership of it.
Absolutely.
In appreciation, you don't own shit, but you're just saying this is
Enjoy
something that
the-
I
enjoy the
enjoy.
culture,
Yeah,
yeah.
and this is something that's always been very meaningful to me, and that's just my way of saying thank you. Anything that I can do, anything that I can learn, and be able to appreciate it more. But I know I'm never going to own it. So stop thinking that you're entitled to anything. Not to say that, I don't own it. I'm not entitled to anything. The moment that people are trying to appropriate something, it's usually because they think that they're deserved something, and so.
stop stealing. What's wrong with you? I mean, come on. If I see another commercial where the music in the commercial is unadulteratedly hip hop, but it's not somebody who's tied to the hip hop community, who's literally tied to the hip hop community, who's doing the rapping or whatever, and it sounds super corny, but you're using it because hip hop is like the dominant culture musically in the entire world. And you're using it to sell your product, but you probably got 0 black people on the board. You probably got 0 people on the board who even got a black friend. So I mean, that's appropriation. What gives you the right to do that? You ought to be ashamed of yourself. I understand it's business, and in business it makes sense to do it. But at the end of the day, you don't believe in what you just did. You did it for the dollar. At least be real with yourself. And if people be real with themselves, appropriation will never happen.
Man,
you know what I'm saying?
I usually I don't get to make the decisions for commercial music.
Yeah.
And a bunch of heavy metal.
Hey.
Big Hollows heavy metal going on. Da, 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 da. I love it.
Hey, that should be dope though. That should be dope.
Yeah, I mean, so the show is on YouTube. So please check out our YouTube channel. It's just Cultureless. We do a lot of direct communication and links to the show on Facebook, so you can check us out at Cultureless Documentary, and then Instagram at Cultureless Documentary,
and on Tumblr at Cultureless Documentary.
I stick with the two. I don't know, man. I don't do the social medias.
So if you do that on Cultureless or anything on the social, you probably gonna talk to me. because he don't do social.
But yes, episode 3 is going to be coming out next month. Episode 2 of our supporting podcast will be dropping in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And, yeah, so.
And you can also hear my album, Here I Am, on all platforms, everywhere.
Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Dabbing with Washington Artists.
Make sure to share with your friends and click like and follow below for more great content. Also, check the links below for the more information about the artists and some of their current projects.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it.
Do it. Do it now.